Hello again, everyone. It's Vince Vora here from Tradingwins.com, and today, I thought about doing another video on the strategy, but then thought, there are so many people out there that use different strategies. What is the one thing that everybody can incorporate into whatever strategy they use? And I thought of trading with support and resistance. It is an absolutely vital part, or should be a vital part of any trading plan, and regardless of the strategy that you are using. So let's not waste any time. Let me quickly switch to my chart here, and let's talk about support and resistance and the different methods out there or tools that you can use to identify the strongest areas of support and resistance. Now, I got started in trading about 35 years ago. So when I got started, we didn't have all these fancy charting platforms with all these tools, electronic tools and so on. We used to actually draw our own charts by hand with a pencil and a ruler, believe it or not. Makes me sound very old, but it worked. And luckily these days we have plenty of tools we can use. So let me show you a few of them that you can use very easily that are available on most charting platforms. Now, this is Tradingvew. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but I do love their charting platform and do use it all the time. So I'll use this for the demonstration. Now, this is a chart of Apple. Again, I'm only selecting Apple because a lot of people like to trade Apple. It's a great company, and it looks like a great setup here right now. So we have an area where we had several highs. Here I can extend this line across, and it was a major area of support. So when it pulled back, was no surprise that it found support here and bounced off support. And now it is breaking above this high, clearing it, and heading into new all-time high territory, which is very exciting as a trader. That means there is no resistance overhead at all. So visually on a chart, when you want to identify areas of support and resistance, you want to identify the areas where there is a lot of trading activity, so a number of bars. So if we look to our left on any chart and see an area like this, where all the way to the left we can see more and more activity, more and more bars or candlesticks, whatever it is you use. And we can switch time frames, right? If we go to the weekly, we'll see even more data. If we go to the monthly, we'll see even more, right? And it's important to use the different time frames because the more data on your chart, the more you will identify the strongest levels of support and resistance. But for now, let's just focus on the daily time frame. So I drew these trend lines here, attaching pivot highs to pivot highs, pivot lows to pivot lows, and just identifying the one area of previous support here that price bounced off of. And now we get a break, and it looks like there's nothing above here. There's nothing to the left. So whether you're looking at the daily time frame, whether you're looking at the weekly time frame, right? You look to your left, there's nothing there. And you look to your monthly, there's nothing there because it is an all-time high. And that is why trading stocks that are moving to all-time highs usually works out very well because there is no resistance overhead. Now, let's say we were not in this position. Let's think back here. How would we have known when it was a good time to trade and when not? So, like I said, many of you have your own strategies, but if you want to use something that would further confirm a signal that you're seeing, or at least when you compare the different setups that you have on any given day, you want to select the strongest candidates to trade, right? Trading with support and resistance is something you definitely want to do. So I'm going to show you three quick methods. One that I'm going to start with is a very old method. Before we had the fancy tools, yes, we did have the charting platforms, but not all of these fancy tools. So I'll show you a manual, what I call a manual method of identifying the major areas of support and resistance. And then we will look at volume profile, and we will also look at the anchored Vwap, right? Which is the volume weighted average. So let's start with the manual method. And what you want to do with the manual method is select the time frame you're going to trade on. I trade mostly on the daily time frame. And then what you want to do is go up one time frame. So in my case, I will go from daily to weekly. Now, I'm just going to leave these red trend lines on for now, just so you can see how they come together. But I actually, you know what? Let me just remove them. So we'll start from scratch. Okay. Now, what you want to do when you're on the higher time frame, in this case, the weekly, is you want to just take a horizontal line, right? Horizontal trend line. And what you want to do is find areas on the chart where you have either two or more pivot highs or lows, right? Where they sort of connect or meet. So, for example, if I draw a horizontal line here, you can see that this was tested here, here, and here, and even here, right? When you draw a line like that, you're not looking for a one specific price level, right? It's more of a zone. So as long as the pivots are close to it, it's fine. But two or more, you should draw a line. If you had many points around that area, what it means is that it's even stronger. So, for example, one line that has two pivots, right, is good to use. 3 means it's stronger than the one that has 2. 4 means it's stronger than, both the 3 and the 2. So the more points you can connect on a line, the better it is and the stronger that area should act as support or resistance. So you want to start at the top of your chart and work your way down and draw a line across any area that will have multiple points of support and resistance. Now, on a weekly time frame here, Apple's really run over the last few years. So, there are a couple of recent ones, but then you have to really go back to look at areas where you can find, 2 or more points on a line, right? So let's go, I would draw it this way. Yeah, so let's do those 4 lines for now. And then what we want to do is switch to a daily chart. Now, before I do that, I want to give you one tip. If you have difficulty finding those pivots to connect, one thing you can do is switch your chart to a line chart, right? That shows these points. See these points, right? And that might make it easier for you to identify those. Okay, but once your eyes are experienced, you can find them regardless. But anyway, once you draw those horizontal lines, you want to switch to a daily chart, back to your regular trading time frame, and you can see how well those areas of support and resistance have been identified, right? If you look way back in here, when Apple first started to run, it ran into resistance here and kind of went sideways for a while. Then it broke out of that area and again ran into resistance here, fell back, fell below support for a brief time, came back, ran into resistance again, pulled back, found support again, ran into resistance, traded around there for a little while, then broke out. Look, when it came back, what level did it retest? That same level. It held, came through, and when you break through one level, you tend to go to the next. See that? Broke through there, went there, came back, tested it again and again, then over here a couple times, then here. So you can see how well it works. And once it broke through everything, it went to a new all-time high. When it came back, held support, and now it's taking off again, right? So that is a way to find the strongest levels of support and resistance. Now, the key here is that regardless of how much time goes by, these will always be strong levels of support and resistance. And the more times they're challenged, the stronger they are. So these are lines that you can keep on your chart ongoing. And as new areas develop with multiple, pivots along the line, you can draw new lines, right? So you want to keep adding to it. And that is a simple way of identifying strong areas of support and resistance. Okay, that's the manual method. Now, If we remove those lines, and now we can use a tool like the volume profile tool. And what this does is it calculates the volume by a specific price level, right? And this red line here is the level, the price level that has the most volume, of any time period that's shown on my chart here. So when you're using the volume profile indicator, it depends how much data you're showing on your chart. This indicator will only show you the volume by price level of the data that is shown on your chart. So if I squeeze in more data, right, if I bring in more data, it is going to change, you see, because now there was more volume down here than there was at the level we saw previously. So you want to make sure that whatever time frame you're trading, you have an appropriate amount of data displayed on your chart. So when we look, for example, if I'm trading on the daily time frame, I'm going to bring in 1 year worth of data, okay? And that's what I'm going to use. If I'm going to trade on the weekly, I'm going to bring in 5 years and so on. And if you're trading intraday, you could be looking at a 1 month chart for a 30-minute, you can be looking at a 5-day chart for a 5-minute, and it'll show you where the most volume has been. So you can see that visually you can tell there was a lot of activity along here, and that is where there was the most volume. Again, here there was a consolidation, a lot of activity, lots of volume, right? Now, the key here is that those are the levels that are going to continue to act as support and resistance. So you can see that once we cleared this level and bounced out of it, right? Went on a bit of a run. Now we consolidated again. There was, a decent amount of volume there. And then we broke above that level and we went on another run. Reason being, at that time, this would have been an all-time high, or at least a high for that period, right? There was nothing to the left here if we look on this chart, and it took off. Now, since this is only a 5-minute chart, there may have been another, level, going further back in history beyond those 5 days, where there would have been some resistance here. So again, it depends on your time frame, right? For me, I'm going to go back to the daily time frame, and here it is. So the real opportunities here. Let me bring in a 1 year of data. The real opportunity here is when you clear the strong areas of support and resistance. So throughout here, you can see the bars were pretty even, right? But now that we are moving above here, there is going to be nothing, right? Nothing standing in our way, and that is an opportunity in and of itself. We'll go to the weekly time frame, right? You can see that back in here again, once you cleared the heavy volume, right, it went on a run, usually when you cleared an all-time high. So in the past, right, when this was the all-time high, you cleared it, you went on a run, came back to retest that level, you clear the next all-time high, and you go on a run, right? So it kind of brings the opportunities, to the forefront and makes them easy to spot. So it's a very, very effective tool. Another tool that you can use, let me remove these and take this one off, is the anchored Vwap. Now, a lot of you may have heard about the Vwap tool that a lot of day traders use. But if you're trading on daily charts or weekly charts, you wouldn't usually use the Vwap. But the anchored Vwap tool, you definitely want to use. It helps identify the strong areas of support and resistance. And the way you want to use it is you want to take that tool and just take the main highs and lows, the major highs. You don't want to take every pivot high and low along the way. You just want to take the major one. So we'll recently, that was the major high and this was the major low, right? And you can see how they've come together here. And when we broke above here, we came back to test it. We tried to move forward, came back again, met it, and now we're off and running, right? When we look to our left, if we continue to take the major highs and lows, we would use this one, this one. We definitely use this one, this one has a low, right, etc. Okay, so what you're doing is you're identifying the major areas of support and resistance. So once this high was created here and it drew this line, and if you follow this line along, it comes all the way over here, right? It starts from here, it loops around, and it comes down here. Now, at the time, we didn't have any of the data to the right. We put in this pivot, we pulled back, right? So at the time, we only had this, it was down here, this loop. So when we broke above it, and there were no more white lines to act as resistance, we knew we could see a substantial run, and we did. Now, when we pull back here, at that point, there's the support right there. And in fact, it held it and it moved forward, right? They're very, very effective. They're not just to use in one point in time. Once you draw them, you can leave them on your chart. And, in the future, if this pulls back, this again is going to be an area that will act as support, okay? The other thing you can do is, again, go to the higher time frame, right? Go to the weekly time frame and take that anchored Vwap tool and take the major highs and lows, right? High and low, high and low, and then high and low, and we'll do one more, high and low. So now, from the weekly, you have your key levels, your strongest levels. Well, if we go back to the daily time frame here, there are your lines, right? So now, looking back, right, if we had started this exercise a long time ago, when these anchors, these pivots were created, right, we could see how effective we could have used them along the way. But now these levels are going to be just as effective. What's clear on Apple right now is that there's nothing standing in our way from going higher. So we should continue to go higher. But let's say that something changes in the market and Apple starts to reverse course. The first area it's going to find as support is going to be right here, right? But if it clears that area, if it drops below it, it's got a pretty clear path down to here. So we know from 147, it's likely going to 137 and then to here. Now, here's a key low to keep an eye on. If and when Apple turns around and starts to dropping. Happens around the 130 mark, right? But from 130 to basically 115, there really isn't much. So that's another 15-point drop that will be very easy, probably very quick. And then again, from the 108-ish area down to 88, that's an even bigger one. From below here, it'll really drop, right? So again, I'm not saying it's going to. I'm saying these are the levels to keep an eye on in the future if and when Apple starts to sell off. For now, Apple looks like it has a very clear road ahead. Okay? So there you have it. You have the manual method where you go to your weekly chart, right? Or the higher time frame. One time frame higher from wherever you're trading, right? You take your horizontal line, okay? And you identify the areas where you can plot two or more pivots, right? So there, right? And then here and somewhere there. You have your volume profile that will highlight the strongest areas. And you have your anchored Vwap. And you can use one or you can use a combination of these. But regardless, when you clear those levels and there's nothing overhead or there's nothing below, those are the areas. The empty spaces is what you want to focus on. Those are your opportunities. So if when you're breaking above and there's nothing but empty space, great time to trade. When it's breaking below and there's sufficient clear space until the next level of support, that is where your opportunity is. So this is something you can use regardless of whatever strategy you are using with, you're trading with. Okay? I really hope that helps. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I hope to see you next time on our next video. Take care.